Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to solve chess puzzles. So I'm going to be going from 100 to 700 and I'm going to be telling you my whole thought process on how to solve each puzzle. Okay, so the first thing you do when you're trying to solve a puzzle is you look for checks, captures, and attacks. So let's go through those in this puzzle. So where are all the checks in this puzzle? So we have this check, this check, and this check, and this check, and this check, and this check. Okay, so let's go through these one by one. So this check, it looks like we just lose a queen. This check, we also just lose a queen. This check, we also just lose a queen. So it seems like it would either be this check, and this check. Now, when you're solving these puzzles, the first thing you want to do is try to find the check that will lead to the checkmate. Now, there isn't always a checkmate, but you want to look for a checkmate first, and then you can look at the other categories. So let's look at these one by one. Does this lead to a checkmate? This one, if we go here, he can go here. So not an immediate checkmate. What about here? If we go here, he can go here. So also not immediate checkmate. What about this one? Okay, so when you check the king, there are three ways he can respond. He can either capture your piece, he can block it, or he can run away. And so let's see, can he capture my queen if it's here? No, he can't. The other queen is on the wrong file. Can he block? Again, no, there's no piece to block. So can he run away? The only space he would be able to go would be this square, but it's blocked by his own pawn. So no, he cannot run away. And so this is going to be the answer to the puzzle because this is a checkmate. All right, so now for our next puzzle. So once again, we're gonna go through the same process. We're gonna look for checks, then captures, and then attacks. So let's look at where all the checks are. So we've got this check, and that looks like the only check we have. So once again, when the king is in check, he can either capture the piece, he can block, or he can run away. So, can he capture our rook? No, he cannot. He has no piece to capture it with. Can he block? He cannot block. And so, can he run away? Well, if our rook was here, our rook is covering all these squares. His pawns are covering all these squares, and then he can't move onto the edge. So there's no place he can run away. And so this move is going to be a checkmate, which means that it will be the answer to the puzzle. All right, once again, let's look for checks. So we've got this check, and that is the only check. Okay, can he capture my queen? No. Can he block? No. And just like the last time, the queen's on here. The queen covers all these squares. The pawns cover all these squares. and he can't move onto the edge of the board. So he cannot run away, which means that that is a checkmate, and that means that is the answer to the puzzle. Okay, let's once again look for the checks. We've got this check, and we've got this check. All right, let's see, let's look at both these checks, see if they're any good. So if we check here, he can take. Now sometimes sacrificing a piece is okay, but we're just going to look at the other ones to see if there's any other good checks before we look at that whole line. So let's see. If we go here, he's in check. Now, can he capture my rook? No, he cannot. Can he block the check? No, he cannot. Can he run away? Well, like the previous two puzzles, the rook is here, so it's going to cover all these squares. Now his pawns cover these two squares. Hold on. Let's do that again. The rook covers these squares. The pawns cover these two squares. And now this square, it looks like he could go there, but then we actually realize he can't because this rook is covering that square. And so the king has nowhere to go, and so this is another checkmate. All right, let's look for all the checks. So we've got this check, and we have this check. Okay, that looks like all the checks we've got. All right, so let's look at each check. So if we go here, he can just take, which doesn't always mean that it's not the right answer, but we're just going to look at the other ones. So we go here. Now when he's in check, he can capture the piece, block, or run away. So can he capture this piece? No. Can he block? No. So his only option is to run away. So let's look at the squares he can run to. He can go to this square, he can go to this square, or he can go to this square. So let's look at each of those. So the rook's here. He goes to this square. Now, when you're looking at the next move, again, you want to do the same thing where you look for the checks, then captures, then attacks. And so the rook's on the red square. So what checks do we have? We could go back with our rook and check, but in general, you don't want to repeat moves because if you go back, then he could go back, and then if you repeat a move 3 times, it's a draw. So we want to first see if we can win before we decide to draw. And in most puzzles, it's not going to be a draw. The draw is not going to be the answer. So let's look at the other check. So there's also this check and this check. Now, if we move the rook here, if we move the rook here and the king was here, the king could just take. Okay, so the rook's here, the king's here. Oh, okay, so let's look at this move. The rook goes here. And where can the king go? The rook cannot get taken. You cannot block with a piece. And So the only option would be to run away. Now it can't go here. Now remember, the other rook's here covering this. That's where one of the rooks are, and then the other rook is here. So the king cannot take either of the rooks because they're defended by each other. It can't go here because the rook's covering that. It can't go here, it can't go here, it can't go here. So that would be a checkmate. All right, but that's not the only place the king can go. So rook here, the king can also go here or here. So let's look at this move. We can look at the same idea to bring the rook here. And so let's try to visualize this. This is the hard part of solving puzzles, visualizing it. So the king's here, the rook's here, king's here, other rook is here. The only place the king can go is here. All right. Okay, so it can go here. Let's look at this last place that the king could go if the rook went here. So rook here, king here, rook here. Again, the only place the king can go is here. Okay, so rook's here, king is here. What should our next move be? Let's look again for checks. Well, we have this check here. Let's look at that. Okay, so let's think this through. Rook here, king here. So this rook covers all these squares. This rook covers these squares, checks. This pawn covers these squares. So where can the king go? These squares are covered by the rook. These are covered by the pawn. And then he can't go here because his own pawns are there. So that looks like a checkmate. And so we found the checkmate, and now we know the whole answer. So can we remember what we were supposed to do? Rook here, and then rook here. Okay, once again, we are going to look for checks, then captures, then attacks. So far, we've only had to look at checks because we found the checkmate, but eventually we will not find the checkmate and we will have to look for captures and attacks. So let's start with the checks. Now, we've got this check, and something interesting to note is that this rook is in the same line as the king. The only thing in between is the bishop. So that means anywhere we move the bishop is going to be a check. We move the bishop and we're checking. So we've got a lot of checks here. We got this check, 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 we got this check. All right, so I can see that the two queen checks here and here just give away the queen. So they don't look like the probable solution. So let's look at the discovered check. When you're removing a piece to reveal a check, it's called a discovered check. So let's look at these discovered checks. All right, so one thing to notice is that this queen is covering all these squares. And when we unveil the discovery, the rook is going to be covering all these squares. So, one thing to think about is once we make the discovery, is there any way he can block? And that's one thing to think about to decide where we want to put our bishop. So he can block here. And if he does that, we can simply take because it's not defended. He can also block here. In this case, we can't take it because it is defended by the queen and the king. Okay, so we're not able to take the piece if it's blocked here. But if we look at all these squares that the bishop can go to, one of these squares is also going to be checking the king. And when you have a discovered check where the piece that's being removed is also checking, it's called a double check. And oftentimes in these double checks, he cannot block it because he'd have to block it both spaces. He'd have to put something in both these squares. And he can't. So if we do this double check, there's no way of blocking. There's no way he can't take both of these. He could take the bishop, but he's still in check with the rook. And so he can't run away either because the queen is cutting it off, the rook is cutting it off. So that looks like the correct answer. So let's do it. Okay, so we've got a rook and he's got a knight. So a rook against, if we just had a rook and a king against a king, we would be able to win because you can checkmate with just a rook. Now, if we trade the rook for the knight, that would just be a draw. Because we cannot checkmate with just our king. So we've got to find a way to take the knight for free. Okay, so let's go through the process: checks, captures, and attacks. So we've got this check. And that is the only check we have. So let's say our rook's here. What is his options? He cannot take our rook. He cannot block, so he's got to run away. So he can go here, 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 or here. So whenever there's a lot of places he can go, let's just pick one of them. And if he's able to get out of his situation, we know that our move doesn't work because he just needs one move that's able to successfully have a draw. And he is fighting for a draw because even if he took our rook, he can't checkmate with just a knight and a king. So his best option is to get a draw. So we go here. Let's say he just goes here. Then what do? Can we get the bishop? No, because we don't have a queen. It's just a rook. So we can give, so we go here, he goes here. We can give another check, and then let's say he goes here. Then So our rook's here, his king is here, and it looks like we don't have any more checks. So we're gonna move on from this. And you might be wondering, how do you know when to move on? How do you know it's the wrong line? Well, in general, if you can't find a way to, if you've gone a couple moves, you can't find a checkmate, you've run out of checks, you didn't win any material, then you can move on to the next idea. And if all your other ideas don't work, you can always come back to this idea. So it's not like we're saying, oh, this definitely doesn't work. We're just saying, we're just going to move on for now, and if nothing else works, we can come back to this idea. Okay, so checks. Next is captures. Can we capture anything? No. And finally, it's attacks. Can we attack something? Yes, we can attack the knight. So we can go here or here. So let's look at both those options. So we go here. What is a move he could do? We're just gonna pick a move that looks like it might be good and then go from there. He can go here. Okay. And let's see, do we have any checks? We don't have any checks because if we go here or here, his knight can now take us. So we don't have any checks. So we can attack the knight again. He could just go here. We could attack the knight again. He can't move his knight, but he could just move his king. It doesn't look like we're getting anywhere. So let's look at the other attack. We've got this. Now, where is he gonna go? So this move with the rook here, this is called a pin, where we've got a piece that's attacking another piece, and he can't move that piece because he would be in check. So this is a pin. So where is he gonna go? He cannot move his knight because his knight is pinned. So his only option is to move his king. Can he defend his knight with his king? Well, he can try going there, there, or there, but it's not close enough to the knight to defend it. So wherever he goes on the next move, we can just take his knight. So, and remember, when we have a rook versus just a king, we're winning. So that looks like the solution. All right, so let's look at checks. Can we find all the checks? We've got this check, this check, this check, and that looks like all the checks. So these two rook checks, it looks like he just takes the rook. This check, he just takes the rook. So we're gonna look at this knight check first. Well, in the knight check, he can also just take the rook. So let's see. Oh, wait. Okay, this rook check, he cannot just take the rook because it's defended by the knight. Okay, so that one looks like the only good check. All right, so let's look at this rook check. So the rook's here. So where now he cannot take our rook. He cannot block. So let's look at all the moves he can do. Now he cannot go here. He cannot go here because it's covered by the rook. Here is also covered by the rook. Here is covered by the knight. Here is covered by the pawn. Here is covered by, that's covered by this pawn. This one's covered by this pawn. So he could go here. That looked like the only option for him. Okay. Now, let's say king here, rook here. Where are the checks? We could go back, but in general, you don't go back when you do a puzzle. So let's look at the other checks. We've got this discovery. So anywhere we put the knight, we're going to be checking him. So where can the knight go? The knight can go here, 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 or here. Okay. So let's look at one of those options. Let's look at this one first because this one's a double check. We're checking with the knight and the bishop. So knight here, rook here, king is here. So can he take our bishop and our knight? He has to take both of them. He cannot. Can he block? Well, since one of our checks is with a knight, he cannot block. So where can he go? Let's see. He cannot go here because that's, hold on. Okay. Rook here, king here, knight here. I'm going to put the places he can't go in orange, not to confuse it with where our pieces are. He can't go here because the rook. He can't go here because the rook. He can't go here because the pawn. The pawn is guarding these two squares. Can't go here because the pawn. He can't go here because the bishop. And he can't go here because the pawn. He can't go here because he has a piece here. And he can't go here because the pawn. So it looks like he is in checkmate. So that looks like the answer. Okay, let's look for the checks. Checks first. I've got this check. That looks like the only check. So can he take our piece? No. Can he block? No. Can he run away? Let's look at his options to run away. He can't go here or here because of the rook. And he can't go here because that's his pawn is there. So it looks like he has no option, and that looks like a checkmate. Okay, let's look for the checks. I do not see any checks. Okay, so now we've gotten to the stage where the first move is not a check. And so one thing to keep in mind is, one thing that's important to know when you're solving puzzles is how valuable each piece is. So this is how valuable each of the pieces are. The queen is worth 9 points. The rook is worth 5 points. The bishop is worth 3 points. The knight is worth 3 points. And each pawn is worth 1 point. Now, obviously to win the game, you just checkmate. So the points don't mean you're gonna win necessarily, but the points are just there to give you an idea of if you're winning or if you're losing. Generally, if you have more points, then oftentimes you're winning. And so when you're solving puzzles, it's good to know this point system so you can calculate when you're in a winning position. in these puzzles, there's only one correct solution. There's only one solution where you're going to be in a winning position. Every other move that you make is going to be a losing position or a draw. And so a good idea when you're solving puzzles is to count up all your pieces and all their pieces and see how many points you need to be in a winning position. So let's start with that. Okay, so we each have a queen. Instead of counting like saying, oh, 9 plus 5 plus 5, an easier way to do it is to just cancel, if you have the same piece, just to cancel it out first and then count up what's left over. So the queens cancel out. We've got 2 rooks, they've got 2 rooks, so those cancel out. We've got a knight, he's got a knight, cancels out. We've got bishop, he's got a bishop. That cancels out. So it looks like he has an extra knight and some pawns, and we've got some pawns. So let's count up all his extra material. So he's got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it looks like we need 2 points of material to be ahead. And in general, in these chess puzzles, it's often the case that you have to be a piece up. Unless you're in an endgame. If it's an endgame puzzle, then you could just be a pawn up. But in general, in these middle game puzzles, you generally are going to be a piece up. And when I say endgame, I mean you only have pawns and maybe like a rook or a bishop. It's like mostly pawns, and you might have 1 or 2 other pieces. So it's probably that we're going to need we're either going to need one of his 3-point pieces, his knight or his bishop, or we're going to need to trade one of our 3-point pieces for his rook. Because that would be, if we did that, that would give us 2 extra points. Because the rook is worth 5 points, the knight is worth 3 points. So if we traded, we would be up 2 points. All right, so we looked at the checks, we didn't see any. So now we got to look at the captures. Okay, so let's look at the captures. We can capture this knight. That looks like the only capture. And if we do that, he can capture back either with the knight or the queen. So it looks like we just lose a queen. So we're going to just move on. All right. So captures, then attacks. So what can we attack? We can attack the queen. We can attack the queen. We can attack the rook and the queen. So if we attack the queen here, if we attack the queen here, he can just take. We attack the rook and the queen, he can take. So this is the only attack where he can't just immediately take our piece. So let's look at that. Okay, we attack his queen. His queen's got to go somewhere. Where can the queen go? The queen cannot go here because we just take it. This knight is covering both these squares. So he cannot go here. We're going to block that out. He cannot go here because the bishop. He cannot go here because of the pawn. So it looks like he can only go here. So then what would be our next move? Do we have any checks? We got this check and we got this check. So our knight's here, his queen's here. Now this check he can just take. So what about this check? Well, he can't take our knight there. So he's got to move his... He can't block, because knight checks you can never block. Because knights can jump over pieces. And so he's got to run away. You can go here or here. And either way, we can grab his rook. And we need to be up 2 points of material. A rook is 5 points. So that means this has to be the answer to the puzzle. Okay, so let's do it. All right, once again, we're going to look at checks first. So there's this check. There's this check. And that looks like all the checks. So if we put the rook here, he can just take. So let's look at this check. So he can't take our piece. It's defended by the rook. So he can't block because it's right next to the king. So where can he go? He can't go here because the bishop covers that square. He can't go here or here because the pawns. He can't take our pawn because this pawn defends. And he can't go here, here, or here because his pieces are on those squares. He can't take our bishop because it's defended by the rook. So that looks like a checkmate. All right. One last puzzle it looks like, because we're at 697 and we're going to 700. So it seems like this is going to be our last puzzle. So let's look at checks. We've got check here, we got a check here, we got a check here, and we've got a check here. Which of these look like the best? Well, this check he can take, this check he can take, and this check he can take. So this is the only check where he cannot take. So let's see, he can't take it. Can he block? No, because it's a knight check. So where can he go? So he can't go here, it's covered by the queen. He can't go here, it's covered by the queen. So it looks like he has to go, yeah, he can't go here or here, those are where his pieces are. It looks like he has to go here. So then, what's our next move? Do we have any more checks? We've got this check, and this check. Okay, so let's see. Our knight's here, his king's here. This check, he can just take. Our knight's here, his king's here. This check, he can just take with the rook. Our knight's here, his king's here. This check, he can't take because it's defended by the knight. So where can he go? He can't take it, he can't block. So our queen's here. He can't go here because the queen covers. He can't go here because the queen covers. So that is a checkmate. And that is the solution to the puzzle. Alright, so that's it for this video. I'm going to make another video going from 700 to 1000. So if you like this video and you want to see higher rated puzzles, then make sure to watch my next video. Alright, so thanks for watching and see you in the next video.